Welcome to How You Livin', a transformative podcast featuring best-selling author, inspirational speaker, and minister, Dr. Rick Rigsby. And now, Dr. Rick.
Hello, friends. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to talk to you about the power of humility. Humility revealed in one's life and how intoxicating that power can be. I love people who walk in humility. They change the atmosphere, whether at home or in a relationship or even at work. I'm a father and a grandfather, and passing on my values is very important to me. The behaviors that I reflect are going to be caught by my children and grandchildren, and passing on those behaviors is equally as important. And one of the most important values reflected in my behavior that I can possess and develop and share with future generations is humility, which is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. I love that quote that comes from pastor and author Rick Warren. Listen again. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Humility is so attractive. Humility is so inviting. You know, as a pastor, I constantly read about the various juxtapositions between pride and humility in the Bible. There are classic scriptures that underscore both cases. Scriptures like pride goes before a fall, or God is opposed to the proud, but will exalt the humble. We're encouraged all through the Bible to clothe ourselves with humility. In fact, in all of the records contained in the New Testament, only one time did Jesus ever disclose his own nature. Matthew chapter 11, Jesus said, "For I am gentle and humble in heart." In a recent sermon, I shared a story that always sends chills down my spine. I want you to listen very carefully as I summarize. The prophet Ezra was a religious leader of the Jews who wrote a history of the Jews from Babylon to Jerusalem as they rebuilt the temple and their communities. Ezra tells a story about 3 generations of kings who all began strong, but then were ambushed by pride. Let me pause. Friends, nothing fails like success. Let me say that one more time. Nothing fails like success. Have you ever been to your favorite restaurant? The food is impeccable. The service is unbelievable. You return a year later and it's not quite the same. Nothing fails like success. Being a member of a Division I football coaching staff taught me a lot of lessons. One lesson stands out that is pertinent to our subject today. I can recall the difficulty of practice the day after a big win. In college football, you play football on Saturdays. Most of your games are on Saturdays. There are some exceptions. But Sunday afternoon, after a big Saturday game, was a challenge. I mean, who needs coaching if you've just beat Alabama? Who needs coaching if you've just beat Notre Dame? Who needs coaching if you've just beat the Oklahoma Sooners? Nothing fails like success. You have to work twice as hard to get back at the previous day's level. Now, back to my story, which, by the way, is found in 2 Chronicles, chapters 24 through 26. As I mentioned, the writer is the prophet Ezra. Let me summarize. King Joaz, he's our first king. He reigned for 40 years in Jerusalem. Listen carefully to the words Ezra chose. Joaz did what was right in the sight of the Lord, but he would eventually abandon God and his house. Joaz had a son named Amaziah, who reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. Listen again. And Amaziah did right in the sight of the Lord, but eventually pride filled his heart and he strayed. After Amaziah died, his son Uzziah became king and reigned in Jerusalem for 52 years. Listen again. Uzziah did right in the sight of the Lord, but when he became strong and mighty and prosperous, he went the way of his father and grandfather. The ultimate insult to God was when Uzziah entered the temple and burned incense, something only the priests were allowed to do. Uzziah was so proud that he disobeyed God. And when the priests from the sons of Aaron tried to correct him, King Uzziah burned with anger. Listen carefully to this. The Bible states that while Uzziah was enraged with the priests, leprosy broke out on his forehead. King Uzziah, who began so strong, was a leper to the very day he died. And he lived in a separate house, for the Bible says he was cut off from the house of the Lord. Friends, pride led to the downfall of 3 generations. I want to ask you a question. Who's influencing you today? Who's influencing your children, your grandchildren, your family members, your friends, your neighbors? Who's influencing your coworkers? I want you to think about the values that you hold tightly to. I want you to think about the values that you pass down to your family members. What are the values and behaviors that have been passed down through the generations? What values are you passing down? And is humility one of those values? I really believe it's very important for me to think about the musts that my sons must get from me. I think it's critical that I think about the absolutes that my grandchildren must receive from me. Just like those biblical kings, I'm building an historical record, and so are you. And that record contributes to a legacy of values each and every day. Here's the question. Will those values reflect humility, or will they reflect pride and arrogance? Pride will manifest itself in our lives in several ways. First, in anger, the feeling that we've lost control. Anger will surface when we feel threatened or attacked. We get annoyed, displeased, hostile, provoked, and easily offended. There's a proverb that says an angry person stirs up strife. Have you ever been around an angry person who stirs up strife? Have you ever lived with someone like this? The home is in a constant state of tension. Nobody can relax. Everybody is walking around on eggshells. Have you ever been in a work environment like that? Or, heaven help us, a relationship like that? Friends, the root of this behavior is pride, an excessive attention to self, an unrealistic demand to get our way. And when we sense things or people are beyond our control, we blow up. We become so angry, we lose our rational sense. We can verbally injure those around us with ease. Sin is simply our attempt to get our needs met. Pride says, I have no needs. Thus we go around saying, I'm good, I'm fine. By the way, those are the rallying cries in 2022. Oh, I'm okay, I'm good, I'm fine. Be careful. Another manifestation of pride is a deconstruction of our values. And that deconstruction can come when we are injured, when there's hurt in our lives or unresolved pain. It'll cause us to say things like, I can't do this anymore. It'll cause us to question our beliefs. And as pride kicks in, we'll even question God. We'll wonder if we can't do things better ourselves. You know, arrogance says, I can handle it. But humility says, there's no way that I can handle it. I need help. Friends, arrogance is a byproduct of strife, but humility is the trademark of a pure heart. Pride says, I don't need anything. I certainly don't need your help. Humility says, I need help. I need encouragement. I need an encouraging word. I like this quote from British theologian R.W. Stott, who said on one occasion, pride is your greatest enemy. Humility is your greatest friend. I've often said from this famous philosopher Anonymous that ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity. In his classic book, simply titled Humility, Andrew Murray once said, "Humility before people will be the only significant proof that our humility before God is real." Friends, pride has ruined more lives than perhaps anything else. And so today, we have one of two invitations. We can accept the invitation of pride, but it comes with a price. Pride leads to destruction. Or we can accept the invitation of humility and walk in humility. Humility leads to a life of blessing and encouragement and lifting up other people. So here's the question. What is it that's influencing you today? Note the pronoun. I did not say who. I said what. What's influencing you today? Humility or pride? Humility produces kindness and gentleness and patience. Pride produces strife and contention and self-conceit. I want to share this story with you, friends. Years ago, I had the privilege of speaking at a chapel service at one of the top theology universities in the world, Dallas Theological Seminary. And I really wanted to meet this famous Bible teacher named Howard Hendricks. He went by Prof. Howard. Prof. Howard passed away a few years back. And I finished my speech, and the university folks at Dallas Theological were kind enough to set up a luncheon with me and Prof. Howard. And so over a brown bag lunch, I had this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to just really pick his brain. However, I did not like the way the conversation started. This is a true story. Prof. Howard, who didn't know me other than listening to me speak in chapel service, starts off the conversation by saying this. He said, "Rick, do you know what your problem is?" I said to myself, I'm going, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Do you know what your problem is?" He said, "You just wowed all those people in chapel service." And I paused, didn't say a word. He said, "Do you know what my problem is?" Prof. Howard said, "Later this afternoon, I will speak to some donors and I will wow them." And then he said these words that still send chills down my spine. He said, "The problem with people like me and you is that at some point, they start to believe their own press." Oh, friends. Oh, friends. Those words have stuck with me for years, and I want to ask you this question. It's a question I ask myself every single day. Are you believing your own press? What's influencing you? Humility or pride? Let me ask it in a different way. What's influencing your children, your grandchildren, your siblings, your relatives, those closest to you, your neighbors, your team at work, your coworkers? I often think about the story of those 3 generations of kings who started so strong, but their success resulted in them being filled with pride, and it was that pride which led to their demise. UCLA great basketball coach, the late John Wooden, lived by a very simple motto. He said this: "Talent is God-given, be humble. Fame is man-given, be grateful. Conceit is self-given, be careful." I like my wife's constant advice to me. Here's what she says on a regular occasion. She'll say, "Rick, make sure that you walk humbly before God and before other people. And if one must brag about accomplishments, let the bragging come from others. Never, Rick, under any circumstances, talk about yourself." Those are wise words from a very wise woman. I'll close by saying this. Many of you who listen regularly know the fondness and the appreciation, the love and the respect I have for my dad. He was wise beyond measure. In fact, my father was the wisest man I've ever met in my life, yet he was just a 3rd grade dropout. My dad died when I was 42 years of age. I knew my father on this earth for 42 years. In all that time, during my entire life with my dad, I never heard my father brag, not one single time. I don't find it coincidental that a man who never bragged, that a man who never blew his own horn, a man hardly known outside his own family, is now quoted on every continent in the world. God truly does honor those who walk in humility. I want you to think about these words for a few days. Well, friends, that's going to do it for this episode. Until we meet again, this is Dr. Rick asking the most important question I can ask. How you living?
Are you ready to make an impact in your world right now? Do you want to stop existing and start living your best life right now? Dr. Rick wants to give you the first chapter of his best-selling book, Lessons from a Third Grade Dropout, absolutely free. Just go to www.rickrigsby.com/free gift to get the print or audiobook right now.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.